and we'll be hosting the recording on our BAAL YouTube channel. So I'll send out the link on BAAL Mail of the recording. We're just trying to reach the widest possible number of people and encourage a diverse range of applications through holding this workshop. So thank you very much for coming. So we're going to do quick introductions and we'll introduce members of the BAAL Executive Committee to start with. And then we'll go around and I'll ask the previous award holders to introduce themselves. Then we'll ask the previous award holders to say something about why they applied and what they got out of it. And then hopefully we'll have a little bit of time at the end for a Q&A session. So when we get to that bit, if you could put your hand up and we'll try and answer any questions that you might have about the fund. All right, so let's start with some introductions, and I'll just say your name, I hope that's okay, and ask you to speak. So Caroline, can we start with you?
Morning everyone, I'm Caroline Tagg. I'm at the Open University and I'm the secretary on the BAAL EC. And it's great to see so many people who are considering the fund and who've been able to come today.
Thank you so much, Caroline, and thanks for coming too. If there are any difficult questions, I'm going to turn to you, so just remain alert. Thank you. Okay, so still with the BAAL Executive Committee, we've got a team of 3 of us working on the Applied Linguistics Fund this time around. So E, you are our PGR rep. Do you want to say hello?
Oh, thanks, Rachel. Hi, everyone. My name is Yi Zhang. I'm at the University of Warwick. I'm the ordinary member on the BAAL EC, and I'm very looking forward to working with all of you. Thank you for coming today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yi. Thank you. And I think I'm just scrolling through the list of attendees. Sultan, I think you are here. If you are, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Sultan Türkan. I'm a senior lecturer in bilingual education at Queen's University Belfast, and I'm ordinary member on the EC. I'm learning from Caroline and Rachel, really senior members of EC. Really grateful for this time together this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sultan. Thank you. Okay, so that's the BAAL EC that you've heard from already. So now we'll turn to the previous award holders, those people who were successful in their applications for the BAAL Applied Linguistics Fund. So if you would also like to introduce yourself, that would be great. So can we start with Natalie?
Hi, I'm Natalie Brabber and I'm a Professor of Linguistics at Nottingham Trent University.
Thanks, Natalie. Becky, do you want to go next?
Hey everyone, I'm Becky Muradas-Taylor. I'm a Professor of Languages and Linguistics at the University of Leeds.
Thank you. Frank.
Hi, I'm
you're on mute. You were on mute for part of that, Frank. Sorry, I didn't catch it. Yeah, so
beg your pardon. Okay. I hit the button more than once. I'm Frank Monahan. Okay. I'm an honorary associate at the Open University School of Language and Applied Linguistics.
Thank you so much, Frank. And Philip, on the same project, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, I'm Philip Sargent, also at the Open University with Caroline and Frank. And our other member of the team isn't here, Karina, but hi, Karina, if you're out there somewhere.
That's great, thank you. And working with Natalie, we've got John. Do you want to say hello?
Yes, hi everyone. So I'm John Bellamy, Senior Lecturer in Linguistics at Manchester Metropolitan, and I'm working with Natalie on our project on language of coal mining. Hi.
Brilliant, thank you, John. Ian, do you want to go next?
Yep. Hi everybody. I'm Ian. I'm a Senior Lecturer in Critical Applied Linguistics at also Man with John.
Great, thank you. And you're representing also Dan today, aren't you, Ian? I think, yeah, cool. All right, and then finally, I think Gonzalo, do you want to go next?
Hello, everyone. I'm Gonzalo Perez Andrade. I'm based at London Metropolitan University. I'm a senior lecturer in English language teaching, and I'm representing my colleague Hannah King as well, who's senior lecturer in English language, and Sophia Amin, who is from Kensington Primary School.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Gonzalo. So that's our 5 previously funded projects, and there is a little bit of information about those projects, both in the call and on the BAAL website. It would be nice to hear from the successful fund holders, something about perhaps why you applied, why you think you were successful, and maybe how you benefited, but just something quite brief, just a couple of comments. And again, I'll just go around slightly randomly, I hope that's okay, around the group. So Becky, may I call on you first to say something about your experience?
Yes, I'll try and get the length right, bearing in mind everyone's got to talk. So I applied to the fund to fund the Our Lotta project, which was something I had run at York St John University, with Lotta being languages other than English, so Our Languages Other Than English project, which was a social media project. I got people to make videos of themselves speaking a language other than English, and we posted that on social media. And that had worked really well. It had been great in terms of language promotion, but also for the university, because we could present ourselves as a multilingual space. And I wanted to do similar work, but in the city of York, which has a reputation for being very ethnically not diverse, very white, very monolingual, and that is not the case in reality, and I wanted to showcase that. So needed some help, so I applied to the fund for 2 research assistants to work with me, or not research assistants, I called them project coordinators. And for me, the fund was perfect because it the whole point was that it linked research and public engagement. So we were building on work that I and colleagues had done at York St John, and then we were going out into the world and getting people involved. So in terms of showing how I met the criteria, I did go through each one and make sure I wrote something, but it was quite a good fit in terms of the project. So that was partly luck, I think. And one thing that I noticed when I just looked back in preparation for this is that you had to show that the people that you were going to work with were up for working with you. And that was the hardest bit for me because I was spreading out to a city. So I did get a few people to say, yes, I'm interested, and was worried about that bit. And actually that ended up being the difficult bit when I did the project. So I guess some advice, if you're feeling like there's a bit of the criteria that's hard to meet, that might be a real thing that you are spotting, and that it turned out for me that was the case. Hopefully that's enough for now, Rachel.
Thanks, Becky. That's really super useful. Yes, useful bit of information there. And Becky, feel free to put links to the Our Lotta project in the chat, in case anybody would like to look at your YouTube channel, etc. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, Natalie, may we move to you? So along the lines of Becky, anything about your project and sort of hints and tips for potential applicants?
Yeah, so John and I applied, as John mentioned, looking at language of coal mining communities. Previously, I had done work looking at language of coal miners in the East Midlands, and had written a book about the terminology that miners use. But John and I were discussing how we thought there was probably differences around the country, and we wanted almost like a proof of concept, because this is a smaller pot of money. So we applied for funding to then spread some of that research. So we spoke to miners in Scotland, Wales, Yorkshire and the Northeast, and Lancashire as well. And for us, the important part of the project was also to work with the mining museums. And so what Becky was saying there about having interest in the project, all of the mining museums wrote us letters to say that they were willing to take part in the project, because the thing that we thought was that the mining museums have lots of stuff, but they don't tend to really focus on the language. And we wanted to see if that was the case. So we're able to visit all the mining museums, and while we're there, also record miners and our results were really great and showed lots of variation. So we're now hoping to apply then for larger funding, and we can show that there is kind of reason behind wanting to do this project, that we have shown that there is variation. For any sort of helpful tips, it is obviously quite a small amount of money, so I think not to overpromise or to think you've got a small period of time and a small amount of money, so you can't do what you would do in a grant of £100,000. So try and keep very realistic to what you can do with that time and money, I think is what I would say.
Thank you so much, Natalie. That's really useful. John, I wonder whether you want to come in and add anything about that project.
Yeah, absolutely. What I will say is that the brief is very clear, and definitely take that into account. So, for example, we looked at very carefully what areas the brief would like. So make sure you take that into account. So, for example, linguistic citizenship really came out with us. So we have the engagement with museums, but also with the miners themselves and the public. So the whole notion of valuing language as heritage was fundamental to the project. We felt that was quite a good fit with the Applied Linguistics Fund. On that note, another tip I'd give is look at the previously successful projects. That was quite useful for us as well, just to see, you know, what's quite interesting. And as Natalie pointed out there, this has led to other ideas now and bids. So it's always good to think ahead. So it's like almost like a seed fund for other things, you know, that you might do later on, other bids and other collaborations that this might lead to. I think that's what I would look at.
Thank you, John. Yeah, really pleased to hear that it's part of a sequence of projects that you're working on. Thank you so much, both of you. Really interesting and very useful. Thank you. Okay, so let's move over now to Ian. Would you mind telling us something about your project and why and how you applied?
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Yeah, I'd echo everything that everyone else has said, really. So the title of our project was Challenging Language Discrimination in Schools towards a typology of teacher-led resistance. So it's all about the kind of work that teachers do in schools to push back against what they felt and what others, including me and Dan on the project, have shown are often quite oppressive ideas about language in schools. So just like John said, like before we were applying, we looked very closely at the themes of the fund. We were interested and happy to hear about BAAL's commitment to equality and diversity, as well as its renewed focus on language rights and language discrimination. So the aims of the project really kind of spoke to that, and we felt that BAAL was the right funder. I think that's really important to consider when you're thinking about a funding bid, you know, actually matching what you're doing with the correct funder. It is a small amount of money, but nonetheless we were able to do quite a lot with it. And I think what Natalie said, you know, don't overpromise, but it's also led on to some larger grants. So we're very happy to have had the money from BAAL to enable that. And even though it was quite a small amount of money, we were still able to do quite a bit with it. And we got a lot of support from BAAL throughout the whole process, in terms of administrative support, but also in terms of encouragement to present at the conference, etc., and this workshop as well. Yeah, I can talk a little bit more later about what we think made it successful in terms of how we framed the research, but those are the headlines really about why we applied, and just a little bit of advice about others that are thinking about applying. Is that okay, Rachel?
That's perfect, Ian. Thank you so much. Really useful, interesting comments about fit. Yeah, and thinking, you know, seriously about the fit between the types of things that you want to do and what the call is looking for. So thank you, and I might come back to you later. Thank you for that offer. I've made a note. Okay, good, thank you. So let's move on to our penultimate project, I think. Frank, would you like to speak to us for a bit?
Okay, so our project is about the blue plaques that we see around London, around famous people. I mean, we're looking at the Black presence or absence of Black presence within that scheme, because this is part of an ongoing work that we're doing around linguistic landscapes. So we previously done work that Philip produced a book out of this around the Led by Donkeys campaign, around the anti-EU Brexit stuff that was going on. And it fits naturally into that as another progression into, okay, how are these issues about citizenship being reflected in the public arena? So that was where the initial impetus came from when we saw this opportunity. Everything everybody else has said about is, again, I completely concur with, and trying to scrabble around in my head now for what I can add to that. In terms of fit, it's also the idea of how it fits longer term into what you're doing. So we're also conscious that we needed to fit this into eventually our teaching program. So we're also looking for something that actually then we might be able to use within the OU program. So that was one aspect of it, and also then led to further funding. It's important to recognise, as people said, that it's not a large amount of money, so you do have to think about what else you can do. So we were also conscious that we would probably need to get additional funding, because what we're doing was to produce a video in partnership with some other organisations. So we knew that we would need more money because we needed a professional video person, we needed editing, we needed assistance for that. So it was also important to think about what else can you draw on that will help you complete the project successfully. So I think those are the main kind of things that we were looking at when we did it, and happy to come back or for Philip to expand on what else was kind of key drivers.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Frank. Yeah, really, really interesting. So fit, not just sort of values and aims and values, but sort of longer term sort of trajectory, which I think John also touched on in his remarks. So yeah, thank you. Super useful. Philip, same project. Do you want to add anything to what Frank's already said?
Thanks, Rachel. The only thing I'd add is that, as Frank said, the project. Sorry if you can hear noise in the background. They've got drilling right outside. The only thing, yeah, as Frank said, the project itself was producing a video or a film, and that was both the research and the output. And this is part of what we've been doing with these other projects. So for the Led by Donkeys one, it was a book, but it was in the form of a graphic novel. It had lots of pictures. We also produced a film prior to that. And so I think we were very pleased that the BAAL Fund would fund things which weren't straightforward, or not straightforward, we're a bit more creative and a bit more unusual in terms of both output and in terms of the process, because that's something we've been trying to do a lot in our work recently. We think it's very valuable as an alternative way both to engage people, but also to present data and ideas, and yeah, so it was great from that perspective. That, well, I mean, we did, when we were putting in the bid, we weren't sure whether that was the sort of thing, whether that might not be the sort of thing that would be funded. So yeah, we were very pleased that that was the case, and hopefully it's something, yeah, that's, well, it's something that we're going to continue with, and I think other people are doing similar but different things in a different way, to sort of break free of some of the sort of constraints that academic writing particularly tends to have.
That's great to hear, Philip. The drilling's not great to hear. That sounds really loud. I hope you're okay. But yeah, great to hear that it allowed you to be a bit more sort of innovative in the kind of work that you were able to get funded. You mentioned that video that you made, so that's fantastic. And we've always been interested in innovation when it comes to the Applied Linguistics Fund. So good to see that that is providing an opportunity for you to be creative in a slightly different way perhaps than other funders would support. So yeah, really great. Okay, so finally I think we come to Gonzalo. Would you like to tell us something about your project?
Thank you, Rachel. Yes, well, our project actually started on paper before we applied for the fund, because we started having discussions with people from a school in East London who were talking about a multilingual approach that we're adopting to the curriculum and their teaching. And we're really interested in seeing what was actually happening in the classroom. So we started organizing a few visits. We wanted to see what actually the teachers were doing, how the students were experiencing that. And then we saw the fund as an opportunity to make this a bigger project. I think one of the, I mean, this is going to sound a bit cocky, but one of the clever things that we did was to include members of the school as people who were going to apply for the fund. So it wasn't just the university, it was also a project that involved the school in a more formal way. So that allowed us to create this partnership, this collaboration between our university and the school. And this is what we were trying to explore, to what extent this collaboration could actually support this promotion of multilingualism at school. So in terms of the actual project, we developed a multilingual library at this school. We bought about 104 books in 43 languages, and we actually, well, most of the fund went in that direction, right, in developing that library, but we also engaged in knowledge exchange activities. We created events for the community, because the whole point of the project was to target educators, students, and the community. I must mention that also what helped a lot was to attend this session of Q&A with previous awardees, and that allowed us also to ask the right questions and sometimes to focus our application more on the needs of the fund. I remember there was a clear theme as well when we applied that had to do with multilingualism, social justice, and inclusion, and we saw that our project was going in that direction as well. And finally, as has been the case with many other awardees, this project also allowed us to secure bigger funding in a new project that is also related to this original idea. So yeah, I'm very happy with the outcome of the application and the project itself.
That's really good to hear. Yeah, all the projects sound totally amazing, really inspiring to see the breadth and the depth of impact that applied linguistics is having via this fund. It's really totally inspiring. Thank you so much, all of you. So Gonzalo just mentioned the theme, so maybe I'll say just a few brief words about that. But we're coming on to the Q&A bit. So if anybody does have any questions, either for the executive committee or for any of the previous award holders, you can either raise your hand or type your question in the chat. Becky, thank you for putting the links to our Lotta in the chat. And if any of the other previous grant holders would like to put links related to their projects, obviously, please do go ahead. Yeah, so Gonzalo mentioned the theme, that very broadly speaking, the BAAL Applied Linguistics Fund aims to support innovative activities which link research and impact or public engagement. So that's a very broad aim of the fund. Again, we've got up to £15,000. So a couple of the awardees have mentioned that is quite a small amount of money, and therefore the applications for funding should be feasible within that amount of money. In terms of the specific aims, the theme this year is advocacy, meaning what is the importance of our discipline, applied linguistics? What do we do? What can we add? So raising awareness of what applied linguistics is and how it works and what it can add, how it goes about its business of solving problems in real life in which language is assumed to be part of that problem. Anything that raises awareness of that will fit this round of funding's theme. And in the call, there's a few slightly more detailed examples of how that might happen. So greater advocacy for or promotion of our discipline as useful. And that theme came out of discussions at our BAAL conference and AGM, so, and also the survey that we recently did of our members. So we're responding to that call. So advocacy is the specific theme. And as the previous award holders have mentioned, there is an emphasis on connecting research users with us, with the applied linguists. So you can see that coming through in all of the projects that you've heard about so far. So connecting together with research users. They might be in the heritage sector in museums, as you've heard, policymakers, teachers, as you've heard, companies, lawyers, police, community groups, health workers, charities, etc. So end users of our research. Yeah, so that's a little bit of information about the call, and thank you, Gonzalez, for that sort of nice segue into that. Okay, so I think it's over to anybody who has any questions. As I say, either please do feel free to raise your hand, and Sultan and E, if you could also help keep an eye out for any raised hands, that'd be really good. And questions in the chat also welcome. So I'm just having a look at the chat. So Hugh Yi Lin has asked in the chat, if the beneficiaries are students and teachers, would this be considered public engagement? I'll give my answer first, and then I'll ask Caroline to come in, if that's okay. I think that could be a yes for me, in the sense that if those teachers, if the teachers are involved in curriculum development, for example, or assessment development and design, then there's the potential to influence their thinking from an applied linguistic perspective, and therefore their practice. So I think that would be considered impact. So yes, I think the answer is yes. Students may be a little bit more difficult to think about how that would work, but you know, we're open to persuasion if you can tell us how those people are end users of, how the students are end users of your research. So I think teachers, for me, definitely yes, and students would be open to persuasion. Caroline, is there anything else that you'd like to say about that particular question?
Not really, I suppose, just to agree with you. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important, obviously, that we're looking beyond sort of typical research contributions. So we're not looking at, for example, you know, disseminating research at your normal academic conference. But I think, as you said, Rachel, if you're talking about impacting on teaching practices that happen to be at higher education institutions, then that is an impact that goes beyond sort of academia in the research sense. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. Ian, yours was not in it wasn't higher education, it was schools. But and you're just looking at the subtitle of your project was towards a typology of teacher-led resistance. So do you want to say something about your work with teachers in schools that might be relevant to that question?
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Yeah, I guess one of the core aims of our project was that we really wanted to platform and highlight the kind of critical work that we already knew that a group of teachers were already doing, because we already had an existing and quite good relationship with those teachers before we even started the project. And you know, those teachers were written into the project right from the very beginning. So they were beneficiaries of the project in the sense, well, in multiple senses really, in the sense that they were playing an active role in a research project, which teachers often don't get to do. They were learning things from the project in terms of their own development, but the project was also designed in a way that teachers were then positioned in a way to feedback not just to their schools but to the national context more broadly. So towards the end of the project we had an online symposium where teachers presented some of the work that they'd been doing as part of our research project, and that was opened up to a much broader audience from outside the project as well. So there was a broader engagement written into it. I'd hesitate to say that whether that was public engagement or not, but it was certainly engagement with a broader audience in terms of teachers, and we had some policy makers who came to that work as well. So I think it was important to think about how teachers are positioned as like participants within the project. We weren't just doing work on those teachers, we were with those teachers. You know, the teachers helped to shape the research agenda, they shaped the research questions, they were involved in the analysis, so they helped to refine some of the themes. So they were genuine partners in the project and engaged in the projects. But I think it's really important to stress that there was, like I said, there was already that relationship there. So we trusted each other. There was a sense of yeah, we were getting something out of it as researchers, but the teachers were getting something out of it as teachers. So yeah, there was engagement on multiple levels. It wasn't just this kind of bolt-on thing that you often see at the end of research projects. It was designed and written in to the very architecture of it right from the beginning. And I think, I don't know, maybe you can say, Rachel, but maybe that's one of the reasons why we were successful in actually getting the cash in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely, because there's, as you say, there's right from the beginning, there's a genuine co-participation, isn't there, with those teachers. And as you also said, Ian, it's multi-level, because we would hope those teachers would also enjoy and benefit from that experience. But they're not the sort of engaging in the project primarily as users, but primarily as participants. That maybe there is a little bit of both actually, but the primary focus of their work was to work with you as you say, co-participants, co-researchers in that project, and the end users perhaps were the maybe other teachers or other policymakers that you as a big group were able to communicate with as part of the symposium and the other materials that you produced as a result of the project. Yeah, thank you so much. That's really super useful. Becky, you some of the people that you worked with on the project as co-researchers, they were in a higher education context, weren't they? Because they were students and staff actually, but they weren't the intended end users of that work, were they?
Thank you. I nearly put my hand up to say, shall I say something? So I'm glad you've called on me. Yeah, I think really relevant to Caroline's point about this isn't academics talking to academics about other research. So even if you are involving academics, you're involving them in a different capacity. Yes, a few people who took part were academics, but are also members of the local community, have friends and family who they then spread the word to. So for me, that was the fact that they were academics was not the point. For me, it was a way of getting people involved and forming a community of sort of like-minded multilingual people, which I think we did not quite as much. And this is my point I made earlier, not quite as much as I hoped. My angle of getting people involved, I thought, was going to be things like Refugee Action York or the local tourist office, local restaurants. And I had so many people saying I'd love to take part, but then for reasons didn't actually manage to do the taking part bit. So I got the willing but not the doing. Whereas with I think perhaps some of the people that I asked who were academics were in a better position because of the work that they do to then follow through and do the doing. Yeah. But I applied for another, did I apply for funding for that? No, I applied to the York Festival of Ideas to do an event to mark the end of the project. And that it felt like we brought in some more people and did get that sense of sort of community starting. And it's interesting hearing a few people were talking about their projects as being situated within a series of applications. So it had come from something, and then there was the BAAL money, and then there was something to go on to that was a bigger pot of money. And Mine didn't feel like that. I'd done the thing before, and then I did the BAAL funded bit, and it feels like it needs to go somewhere, and I haven't worked out where that is yet. So I just thought I'd say that in case anyone's listening, thinking, you know, I haven't got that big overarching plan. Neither did I, and I got the BAAL money successfully. And also thinking about academics as participants. I would love one day, and I'm telling you all this in case you want to volunteer, I would love to get academics to talk in a language other than English on a video about some aspect of their role that's important to them. So either their research or something about their teaching, or, you know, something about their role in the university or maybe the community. But to do it in a language other than English and do the same thing, put it on social media and spread it out to the world. And I think that would have massive benefits for us as a sector to reach people that we're not reaching. So I would hope that that would, although that would absolutely have academics as being the sole participants, I would hope that would also meet the criteria, because it is engaging with the public in some way other than sort of traditional going to conferences and talking about research. So yeah, I'm just putting that there to get you to all volunteer, and in case I want to apply for the fund at some point in the future again.
So Becky is very cleverly recruiting for her next research project. Becky, do you want to put your email address in the chat?
This is a bit of a one day in the future kind of thing, but yeah, I'll put it in, and then let's just keep talking to each other.
Sounds like a really cool idea. Yeah, for lots of different reasons. Yeah, great. Thank you. Good. And Gonzalo, your work was also in an education setting, wasn't it? It was like Ian's, it was school, and you've told us a little bit about the library, which sounds totally amazing, 43 different languages. Is there anything you want to say about the sort of participants that you worked with, and maybe the role that they had within the project, or maybe the dual role that they had in similar or different ways to the roles that Becky and Ian have already described?
Yes, well, as the title of the project says, we try to work with educators, students, and the general public. On paper, it sounds like a great idea, because we say, well, we target all the important elements of this triad. But in practice, obviously, there are important challenges depending on the different stakeholders you work with. I would say it was easier for us to work with the teachers because we had direct contact with them most of the time. We participated in staff training sessions. We were both guests and also the perceived experts in this setting, which was quite interesting because we worked mostly because we wanted to understand what they were doing. They were the experts from our perspective, but the fact that people from a university were coming to the school and observing what they were doing and participating in these tasks, in a way helped them to validate what they were doing, even though we were not there in order to achieve that. The way in which they received this kind of support from us, knowing that also this is a funded project by BAAL, also adds to this. And it's not only for them to understand or to validate what they were doing, but also to show that to the community in general, to have the arguments and the responses, right? When they are sometimes questioned by teachers, by local authorities. So that was a very interesting aspect of the impact of the project. Working with students, obviously, there's an issue of ethics that we always need to keep in mind. So this is when we introduced this idea of developing the multilingual library, which is something that has an impact on the students, and we also organize this multilingual reading program that brought together students from our university with students at the school. Luckily, one of the ways in which we could
我刚结束这边，其实我 assume 这个 workshop 应该不会提供更多他那个。
You need to mute yourself. I think you've done it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Carry on.
Yeah, what I was saying is that I think I forgot the point, but when it comes to when we try to overcome these potential ethical issues, the good thing here was that the school also has its own safeguarding procedures. So working together with the school actually allowed us to minimize potential risks. Yeah, and working with the community was quite interesting because we participated in events that the school organized. So, for example, winter fairs. So we tried to talk to the local community, which, I mean, this is a community where most of the students are categorized as EAL. So 80% of the students speak a language other than English at home. And therefore the linguistic diversity of that area is huge. However, we found it quite interesting that people were not really comfortable sometimes speaking about their languages. Just they would only refer to more global languages, to English, but their own minoritized languages were a bit hidden in the background. And I think that these events, especially when we hired, for example, a storyteller that would tell a story using different African languages, and just to make that visibility possible within these events, had an undocumented but visible impact on the public, the general public as well. So as I said before, working with different stakeholders presents different challenges, but at the end of the day, we can make reference to what we witness and what we can document.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Gonzalo. And I think that is relevant, that last point you made about working with different stakeholders presents challenges. I think we are hoping from this round to learn about how to raise awareness of the discipline of what applied linguistics is and does, and advocate for our discipline, and in that learning way. So not so much solutions, ultimate solutions, but learning for that can be disseminated across the discipline for ranges of ways, with various different risks and costs and benefits attached to them, which have been evaluated, various different ways of advocating for our discipline. So yeah, I guess that's, sorry, I've just made quite an obvious point there, but these projects as a way of learning things as well as finding things out, I suppose that's what I'm trying to say. But, yeah, thank you for that, Gonzalo. That was really great. Natalie, I can see you've come to my rescue. You've got your hand up. Over to you.
Thanks. I just wanted to quickly come back to something that Ian raised, because I think it's such a really important point when he was talking about the teachers in the schools that he was working with. John and I did the same with our museums. It was to have our partners involved right from the very start. I think academics have sometimes got a bad reputation for thinking of a project and then last minute contacting people and saying, I need somebody to help me do this. We contacted the museums well before we even applied for the funding to run through the project with them. And then something that was really great that the BAAL funding allowed us to do was, at the end of the project, we brought the different mining groups together, the different mining museums together, sorry, and they could feedback on what we'd done during the project, what they thought had worked and what hadn't worked, how they would like to move forward. And even just the fact that they had the opportunity to meet together. Museums are incredibly short of time and money, and for them to be given funding where they could travel to one of the museums, see what what the other museums were doing, get a tour around the other museum. I think it really strengthened our project, and also how we know we want to move forward, because we had really great feedback from them throughout the project.
Yeah, great, thank you. Very, very important point about how we collaborate ethically, and you know, in a way that's useful to our collaborators as well as to us and our discipline. Yeah, really important point. Thank you for that, Natalie. Okay, does anyone have any more questions, either to pop in the chat or to raise their hand? We'll wait for a few seconds to see whether anyone does have, and then if not, I'll just very briefly summarise, talk about next steps, and then maybe Caroline, just pass over to you to for any concluding remarks. So would anybody else like to make any other points or questions? Frank, you're waving your hand. Do go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, just one point that arising from things that a number of people have said, really, particularly Becky and then just Natalie, is about flexibility with working with organisations. When we initially put in our bid for the fund, we had a partner that had agreed to work with us and then withdrew because they'd had a change in their staff. It was a small cultural art thing, and so that person left, and then the other people, well, the guy wasn't really happy to work with us because we couldn't offer him enough incentive to get involved. So I think being flexible to sort of setbacks is really important, that we were able then to find another partner who we've worked out with really successfully, and that's the fact that BAAL was happy for us to make that change. Even though it was post application being successful. So I think that thing about being flexible about what you're doing, not just in terms of the partnerships you're doing, but in general, that things will crop up that really get in the way that you need to be able to work around. So I think that's something I would try and build into the process of when you're making a bid, is to think, okay, what if something goes wrong? What if somebody pulls out?
Yeah, thank you. Oh, I'm glad to hear. And I remember that that interaction with you in your project, Frank. So I'm glad to hear that you experienced the flexibility and the sort of conversation that was had around that as positive. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. It's just a reality, isn't it, of doing the kind of work that you do and that colleagues do, that there are inevitably going to be changes.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Rachel, the serendipity of that was that the new partner we had led us into a whole other way of thinking, because the partner that we got is a group called Black History Walks, and so they do walks around various cultural sites involved with Black heritage, and that then led us onto a whole new area of thinking about mobility walking, so walking as part of our research process. So, you know, be open to serendipity would be the other thing.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's good life advice, not just good BAAL Applied Linguistics Fund advice.
Rachel, there's a couple of questions appeared in the chat. I don't know if you've seen them. Yeah,
I've just seen them. Yeah, thanks, Becky. Great. So Astrid, is there a link? Yeah. So, and Caroline, thank you for putting that link in the chat. Astrid, there's the call itself, which you've seen, and that is available on the BAAL website. And there's this workshop. We also did a workshop a couple of years ago for the last round, so you can hear in that one previous fund holders talking about their projects. So that's on the BAAL YouTube channel, so you perhaps could have a look at that. And also happy to answer any questions after this workshop. You feel free to email me if you've got any questions. Or as you can see on the Word document, there's actually a dedicated email inbox there, funding at BAAL's. So feel free to ask questions after this workshop. Alexander, would it be acceptable, stroke advisable, to apply as a larger group? That's totally fine. Yeah, happy to consider applications from larger groups. Just bear in mind that the lead researcher must be a member of BAAL in order for that application to be considered. Thank you. And yeah, thanks again, Caroline, for that link. Okay, so I think unless anyone's got any more questions, we're coming to the end. Still time, so if something pops into your head, do put it in the chat or raise your hand. So I think last chance then for our previous fund holders. Thank you so much for all your contributions, really super interesting, inspiring, in fact, to hear from you. Is there anything else that anybody would like to add as a final comment, previous fund holders? No? Oh, John, was that a...
Well, thanks for the opportunity, really. I just wanted to express my gratitude, you know, for the funds in the first place. And I would encourage people to apply. Yeah, that's all.
Great. Oh, well, thank you for that, John. That's really kind. And also, Natalie, yeah, very, very Very kind of you. It's just, it's so great to see what that funding has enabled. Yeah, really fantastic. So our previous fund holders made a range of really interesting comments around the scope and the scale of the project. To think that through really carefully, bearing in mind it is quite small amounts of money, to be realistic, feasible, and to think about fit in terms of values and the aims of the call and your own project, but also fit perhaps in a slightly longer term trajectory, thinking about how it might work with things that you've done in the past or funding you've applied for in the past and in the future, although not necessarily, as Becky pointed out. And to think about your research users, how to engage them right from the beginning in the design of the project, and the challenges of that, as Becky also mentioned, sort of benefits and challenges of engaging those co-participants, those collaborators. And then we talked about creative outputs and really welcome innovation. Give us your craziest ideas for how you might show that applied linguistics is a very useful discipline to have around, to advocate for our discipline. Okay, so in the last minute or so, Caroline, I wonder if there's anything that you want to say as our executive committee secretary.
I feel the weight of responsibility here in the last couple of minutes. But no, I'd really just like to wish everyone all the best in putting together their applications. We're really pleased that you're considering the funding and pleased that you've been able to come along today. And as Rachel said, do contact her or the general email if you have any questions. I'm also happy to answer any questions if you want to write to me. And I think Ian put into the chat that he's also happy to take questions, and I'm sure that's true of everyone here who's spoken. If you think that any of us can be of any help, do get in touch. We do want to give you the best opportunity to submit the best application you can, so do take that on board. And then finally, just to thank also the previous award winners for coming today. It came out strongly in the BAAL survey that we ran, that Rachel mentioned earlier, that what a lot of our members, particularly early career researchers, really want is mentoring and support. And doing sessions like this is one of the ways that we're trying to address that, to support our members to get our funding as part of sort of wider measures we're working on. And so we really appreciate that people who've benefited from having the funding in the past are willing to come here and to talk about that. I think that's really feeding back to the community and recognizing your expertise and passing that on. So we're really grateful for that. And then finally, thanks Rachel and Sultan and Yi for running this event. And with that, shall I hand back to you, Rachel, for the final goodbye? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Caroline. Yes. Yeah. Really important point about giving back and mentoring. So fingers crossed this has recorded successfully, and if it has, I'll put it on the BAAL YouTube channel and send a link to it on BAAL Mail. Just a quick shout out as membership secretary for our BAAL Solidarity memberships. It's a category of membership that we piloted last year and we're running again this year. So if you know of anyone who might be interested in applying for a Solidarity membership, have a look through your BAAL Mail emails for the criteria. I'd be really grateful if you could promote that opportunity very widely. That would be really great. Okay, so thank you, Caroline, and thanks to everybody, especially previous award holders, BAAL EC members, and all of you who are here. Please apply. The deadline is the 1st of April. We really look forward to receiving your applications. I hope you've been inspired by today. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and yeah, hope to hear from you all soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.